All right. So jumping in, hello everyone, happy Thursday. My name is Natasha Jones, if we haven't met yet, and I'm the Life and Work Advisor at the Patty Disney Center for Life and Work. And today I'm going to be talking about virtual networking strategies. And if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. I will be, of course, asking for questions at the end, but I do have a bit of content to get through, so I'm just going to save the questions for the end. All right, so I just wanted to give a little overview of what I'll be talking about during this presentation. And firstly, I'll be giving just an overview of the Center for Life and Work and our team and some of the services that we offer. And then I'll be jumping into the content of the presentation, talking about networking myths and the accompanying truths, and then going into general networking principles and tips, best practices, things like that. And then I'll talk specifically about strategies about how to connect with your existing network and also how to connect with strangers. Then I'll be going into informational interviews and finally following up with initial connections that you make during networking, and then also how to maintain those relationships. So a little overview of the Center for Life and Work. We provide a variety of resources for students and alums to help them chart their path to success and sustain themselves as creative leaders in the world. And we do that in a handful of different ways. Some of the things that we offer as services are one-on-one advising with our staff. In the next slide, I'll get into very specifically what we advise on and who you would talk to. We also, our director, Bailey Cool, organizes or is kind of like our campus representative for Fulbright. So she meets with students and has created a really good kind of like program and timeline for students to submit application materials and have faculty and other people from CalArts that have done the Fulbright program. She shares students' applications with them, so you get a lot of great feedback. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely reach out to Bailey. We also do workshops like the one I'm leading now, and I've also led others on things like resumes and cover letters, interviewing, job searching, and we also offer academic courses as well. Some winter session courses, and we have a few coming up in the fall as well, such as creative entrepreneurship. We also do an internship program. So if you're a current student and you have an internship and you want it to count for academic credit, our office can help you with formalizing that and doing all that paperwork and the necessary steps to do that. And we also do employer events. So if an employer has maybe like a bunch of positions they're trying to fill or upcoming like internship cycles, we will invite them to lead events with us where they just kind of similar to this, like host a presentation. We invite students and alum and they just get to share like what they're about and what they have to offer. And our team, we're a small but mighty team of 3, comprised of Bailey Cool, our director. And these are all the things that we individually advise on. So Bailey, as I was saying before, advises a lot on Fulbright, also generally entrepreneurship. So if you're interested in starting a business or something like that, she's actually co-teaching the creative entrepreneurship class. She also advises on travel funding. So previously we had travel grants and fellowships, but we're not offering that currently. But still, if you are looking to travel for a project or something and you want to explore funding resources, she can help you out with that. And also grad school, if that's something that you're interested in, she's a good person to talk to. And then we have myself, the Life and Work Advisor, and I do a lot of advising on things like your professional package or application materials. So if you're applying to something and you have to submit a resume or CV or cover letter or portfolio, some sort of written statement or something like that, and you want someone to look over it, or you want to talk about like how to write those things, you can meet with me about that. I also meet about interview preparation and also mock or practice interviews. So if you have an interview coming up and you want to run through like how you would respond to certain questions, we can set up a time for a practice interview and kind of go through all of that together. I also talk to people about job and internship searching, and then LinkedIn and networking, like we're going to be talking about during this presentation. So if you want to have a further conversation about maybe like your specific situation or very specific strategies, reach out to me and then we can find a time to meet and talk more about that. And then finally, we have our assistant director, Zarina, and she largely does the advising for our internship program. So helping you out with that paperwork, all those formalities. She is your person for that. And I also wanted to share with you some of our online resources. So if you have not visited our page on the CalArts website, I recommend you do so. You just go to calarts.edu and then the Life at CalArts tab, and then the Center for Life and Work. Under there, we have a bunch of different pages with information. But especially our job search support page has a lot of resources there. So we have things like handouts with guidelines on how to write a strong resume and cover letter and some examples. Also how to write an artist statement or bio, things like that. And then also on that page, we have a bunch of links to external job boards. So if you're actively in your job search and you're looking for things online, you're using like Google and Indeed, those general search sites. We also have other sites to recommend that are creative industry focused that just give you another place to be searching. And then another resource that we have online is Compass, which was launched in April of this year, so it's fairly recent. But Compass is, one of its largest functions is that it's our CalArts job board. So if ever employers reach out to us in the Center for Life and Work and want to share positions with students and alum, we post it on Compass. So that's one of the main features. Another feature on Compass is when you log in and make your account, we have a what's new or little kind of announcement section here where we post about things like open calls or competitions or just opportunities that wouldn't really fit in like a job or internship kind of category, but are still valuable opportunities. We'll share them here. And then also things like upcoming events like this workshop right now are all advertised on Compass. And something else that you can do on Compass is schedule advising appointments with any of us in the Center for Life and Work. So if for whatever reason you don't want to email us to find a time to meet, or you just want to see kind of our times and like available appointment slots without reaching out to us, you can see our calendars there on the advising appointment tab to the left. All right, so now jumping into the content of our presentation, if you all could participate in the chat, with this question, what do you think of when you see or hear the word networking? Just any word or phrase that comes up for you, so I can just kind of like get an idea of what sort of knowledge and feelings we're coming in with. Okay, so we have, I'll just read some of the things people are saying. Coffee meetings, collaborating, name tags, right connection, anxiety, yep. Connecting with individuals to better your career, definitely. Awkward, nervousness, sleepy, meeting strangers, small talk, handing out business cards at events, very sleepy, branding, feel that. Word of mouth, essential, yeah, that's a good word, essential. Forced relationships, yeah, it's an interesting one, and I'll kind of get to that a little later. Collaboration, great. Hard to maintain, yeah, so hopefully I'll be sharing some strategies that will make it seem easier to maintain those relationships. Connections, shallow, vulnerable, insufferable. Yes, definitely feeling kind of a lot of these sort of negative words that people are saying, which is totally fair. But hopefully in this presentation, I can kind of make it seem a little less negative, or make it seem a little more genuine, or maybe easier than you thought. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping out of this presentation. But thank you all so much for sharing that. Oh, I lost, okay. Great, so definitely a lot of those things are true. Networking can make you very nervous and feel anxious and feel kind of ingenuine. But again, I'll kind of hopefully address those and dispel those ideas throughout this presentation. So before we jump into a little more of the content, I just wanted to preface the presentation saying that there are a lot of different reasons and kind of like objectives people have for networking. And kind of like two big objectives might be finding contacts or connections and just genuinely like building your network and just like building the number of people that you know and kind of know you and like you talk to and stuff in the professional space, versus finding clients, networking to find clients and find like gigs and things like that. Those are a little different kind of in terms of like what you would be talking to people about. So for this presentation, I'm really only going to be focusing on networking to find contacts and connections and to just literally build your professional network. I'm not really going to be getting into networking to find clients and things like that. And if you want to talk more about that, we can talk about that individually or in an appointment or something, but just to kind of have a little more narrow focus for the presentation, it's really only going to be, we're going to be talking about finding contacts and connections. Okay, so now I'm going to go through a handful of some networking myths that funnily kind of came up in what you all were sharing and what you think about when you hear networking. So the first myth that I kind of want to address is that networking is slimy or inauthentic. And the truth is that this can totally be true if the only time you reach out to people is when you need something from them. So networking is really about building authentic relationships and just genuinely connecting with people and kind of like just growing the number of people you know in the professional space. And you're kind of doing these things with good faith that benefits might come out of these relationships in the future. But it's really about, again, just building those authentic relationships and connections, so that in the future, if you do need to ask for help or ask for something, that you have that foundation to stand on versus like the foundation of like a good relationship to stand on, versus just kind of like reaching out cold to people and like asking for something or reaching out to someone that you haven't talked to in a long time to ask for something. That can definitely come off as inauthentic. So really networking is about building and maintaining those relationships, again, so that in the future, if you do need something, it's like an ask coming from a friend versus like not a friend. All right, so the second myth is that networking only happens in specific formal contexts. So I think I remember someone saying something about exchanging business cards at an event. That's definitely one place that networking can happen. But the truth is that networking can really happen anywhere that you can talk to people, be it physically or virtually. So again, networking is just about connecting with people in a genuine way. So that can really happen anywhere at all. And this third myth that I want to talk about is that networking is for extroverts. So maybe the people that shared that networking makes them nervous or anxious, maybe you're a little more introverted in nature, or not, that's fine. But the truth really is that networking, clichely, is for everyone. Networking really requires just one-on-one conversation, asking someone a lot of questions and actively listening, which are things that anyone at all can do. And I'm not at all implying that extroverts can't do these things. Really, anyone can have these one-on-one conversations. So networking is definitely not just for extroverts. And a final myth that I'll be talking about is that networking is unnecessary when your work or experience can speak for itself. So this is a sort of dangerous idea. If you think this, like it definitely, you know, makes sense that you would, but I do want to kind of caution you around that. Because the truth is that a very high percentage, a lot of people say around 85% of jobs are obtained through networking. So that means that they're obtained through like connections, through word of mouth, through people recommending other people for a job or a gig. Um, and of course, I'm sure you've heard the phrase that like it's about who you know. That's just what that means. And really, there are a lot of people out there that want to help you, but they can't if they don't know you. So networking is just about, in a way, kind of like getting as many people as you can to know you, so that they are able to like recommend you for things in the future. And a good example of this is that even like with myself and the Center for Life and Work staff, sometimes employers will reach out to us with opportunities or a certain project or something, and for whatever reason, they don't want to post like on Compass or post on a job board. They just want us to recommend like some people to them, which we have done sometimes. So really, like we're willing, you know, we want people to find opportunities, but we just literally can't if we don't know you and if we don't know that we can recommend you. So it really is just so important for you to know people and for people to know you. Okay, now getting into some networking principles and just like tips and best practices. It's always best to start with the people that you already know, your existing contacts, and see who of them knows other people in an area that you want to learn more about. It's always best, again, to just reach out to people you know, because that increases the likelihood that you'll get a response. And it's just easier and kind of like, yeah, just easier to work through existing connections. And also something that you can do for your network, in addition to kind of like asking the people you know for things, if you know people, like two people in your network that you think would benefit from knowing each other, doing something simple like writing an email with both of them copied and like introducing them through that is a really great way to connect people and kind of leave a really positive impression, since you kind of did that favor for them. Like, you know, they're probably more likely to do a similar favor for you in the future. Also, a good practice is to rekindle old connections of people that you maybe haven't talked to in a little while, but had a positive relationship, like maybe a faculty member or a former coworker or supervisor, or even old classmates. And just setting goals for yourself if you're someone that needs to set goals, and it doesn't really come naturally to you to like be reaching out to people. Just setting goals for yourself, like checking in with 1 to 2 people per month, and kind of just updating them on what you're doing, how you're doing, can go a long way. And then just some more tips. You want to, of course, be personal, and especially if you're reaching out to someone that you haven't talked to in a while, just being like very genuine, asking how they are, you know, acknowledging the state of the world is totally appropriate, and just, you know, saying you want to see how they're doing is a great way to start a conversation and kind of like refresh that connection and kind of put yourself at the top of their mind again, and then things can go from there. You also just generally want to be generous and share things with people in your network, the people that you know, without expecting anything in return. So if you perhaps come across a resource like a grant or something, or even just like an article that you found very interesting or helpful, it's a really good practice to, when you find things like that, and maybe it makes you like think of someone else that would benefit from that, just share it with them. And this is just another way to keep those connections fresh again, and like keep yourself in people's minds. And really a lot of networking is just kind of like putting out good energy and kind of hoping that it comes back to you. Um, so this is something that you can do for that. Also, just when you need it, like asking the people you know for help or advice um, is good too, because it shows, you know, that you like trust them and like view them as a person that has knowledge. So that's also flattering. Um, and really kind of like, as I've been alluding to, the focus of networking is building relationships for kind of those benefits to come later. So I want to give you this gift of a very practical thing on how to reach out to your existing network, including those people that you haven't talked, well, mostly for those people that you haven't talked to in a while. So this little message template, I can't say I made it myself. It's from a YouTube channel called Self-Made Millennial. And I really love it because it's super, super simple, and I feel like can be sent to literally anyone that you know that you haven't talked to in a while. And it's just, this can be sent like through email or through a LinkedIn message or even like a DM on social media. But, you know, just saying, hi, person, this pandemic has me branching out and thinking about how to reconnect with folks. And I realized it has been far too long since we last talked. How are you doing? How are things in city or at company or at school? Whatever makes sense in this context. But this is a super, super easy thing that you can do that really, again, just refreshes those connections and puts you in people's minds and shows that you've been thinking about someone, which again is flattering and is a nice feeling for you to give people. So hopefully maybe you've taken a picture of this. And now, so that's kind of how to reach out to the people that you already know. So now I'll be talking about how to reach out to strangers. So just the big kind of tips for that is that you want to be genuine. If you're reaching out to someone, say that you like follow on social media or like an organization that you like really admire, a person you admire, when you reach out to them, just being genuine about that and saying, you know, you can be complimentary and kind of, you know, make them feel good about themselves a little bit. And be curious also. So ideally, you might be reaching out with some questions because you want to learn something from them. So just being very upfront about that is a good strategy. And then if it's someone that you want to kind of like engage in a conversation with and really have them be a kind of like deeper part of your network, ask for an informational interview. So what is an informational interview? If you haven't heard that term before, it's an informal conversation with someone in an industry or a position or a company that you're interested in. And it's a way to learn about what it's like to work in the quote unquote real world. And a great way, of course, to build your professional network. So with an informational interview, I'm gonna kind of give you strategies for how to ask for one and how to reach out to those people that you don't know. So you wanna just be very brief, clear, specific, of course, introduce yourself since it's a stranger. And then also you wanna share why you're interested in talking with them, and you wanna be very clear that you wanna talk to them just to learn from them, to learn from their experience, their expertise. This kind of like initially when you reach out to strangers, you don't really want to be like sharing your resume or kind of like asking about positions or anything, because that's where things might come off as like inauthentic and just like slimy or unpleasant. So really you're just reaching out to people because you want to talk to them and like introduce yourself and learn from them. So an example of a message that you might send to a stranger, hi, their name, my name is your name, and I'm a whatever you're studying student or recent graduate or I work at X in X whatever position, just something to introduce yourself very briefly, and then say something like, I'm very interested in learning more about whatever, if it'd be like their position, their company, the industry. May ask you some questions about your experiences with whatever. Thank you for your time. And again, this can be sent in an email if you have their email. It can be sent on a LinkedIn message. Again, might be sent through social media if that's like where you're the most active and where they're the most active. So yeah, another pretty simple template, pretty low stakes to just send out messages like this. And of course, unfortunately, you can't always guarantee or expect a response, but don't let that dishearten you. You just kind of want to send out, as many feelers as you can, and then have these conversations with people, and then sort of grow your network through that. Okay, so how to conduct an informational interview, some instructions for you. You'll want to first research the person that you're going to be interviewing or that you want to interview, and their company or organization or their work or whatever it may be. And it's very important to remember that you're responsible for this meeting, so you have to be prepared with questions, and you always want to try to ask follow-up questions as well to really show that you're actively listening to them, you're like engaged in this conversation, it's making you think about things, versus just kind of like having a script of questions and just asking like 1, 2, 3, 4. Just you want to make it like a natural conversation, ideally. And then you also want to remember to keep it short, this conversation, especially if it's with a stranger, like a working professional. You want to keep it short to respect their time. And yeah, just generally be respectful and not take too much of it, unless for whatever, of course, if you've like agreed that the conversation is going to be like 45 minutes to an hour, that's totally fine. But a good idea to keep it short, just again, to be respectful of them and their time. And in addition to doing kind of this research on them, you also want to be prepared for them to ask you questions about yourself. So just also when you're preparing for an informational interview, just do some self-reflection, think about your interests, your experiences, your goals, and kind of like just be ready to talk about yourself. And you always, 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 after an informational interview, or even just after someone takes the time to like, even like virtually respond to questions through an email or something, you always want to say thank you to them, because giving gratitude to someone is a really good practice too. The people that, take time out of their day to talk to you about things and like educate you, answer your questions, you can always give them gratitude, which will make them feel good too. And then a practice to kind of keep these people as kind of like active parts of your network is just updating them every like 6 to 12 months, like on career changes or just kind of anything professional or career related going on in your life. Like maybe you got a position that maybe something they said and that they told you like helped influence you in preparing for an interview or something. So just sharing things like that with them every so often to, again, just be fresh in their mind and kind of refresh those connections. So some examples of what you might ask in an informational interview, and this is just one example. You shouldn't ask all these questions because that would be too long of a conversation. But if you have other questions that you like genuinely want to know the answer to, ask those questions. But if you don't know what to ask and you just kind of like want to learn more about someone, these are some really good questions to get at that. So yeah, I won't read through all of these, but just the general format sort of what the interview should be like is that you want to start with introducing yourself and talking about yourself and your goals, so that can kind of like inform the responses that the person you're interviewing gives, just so they can kind of like stay focused and, be sharing the information that will help you the most. And then you kind of want to go into asking questions about their role, and just sort of get a good understanding of what they do. And then asking things about their path, or like how they got to where they are today. And then finally asking for some advice is really important, so that you kind of have some like next steps to work with. And even asking for if they know anyone else that you would be good for you to talk to. So you can do another informational interview, kind of like add that other person to your network as well, and just kind of go from there. So now talked about kind of how to connect with people, what to talk about, but now I want to get into where you can find these people, these strangers to connect with. So go to LinkedIn really quick. Okay, so one avenue that you can explore when you're trying to find people to connect with on LinkedIn is alumni. So you just go to CalArts page, or if maybe you did your grad program or in your grad program at CalArts, you can do this for your undergrad as well. Just look up any educational institution and then go to the alumni tab over here. And then it'll give you this list of like criteria of different people that you might be interested in connecting with. So say maybe you're relocating to the Bay Area and you just want to see people around there. You're maybe looking for people that work in certain places or work in certain fields or based on what they studied at CalArts. And you just select whatever you're looking for, and then you get this list of alum that meet those criteria. And these are people that you can connect with and kind of have these conversations with, ask them questions. So just some LinkedIn etiquette: whenever you search for people and it's in a big list like this, like a grid, you do not want to connect from here because it just automatically sends a connection request. You always, if you find someone that you do want to connect with and have a conversation with, you always want to go to their page on LinkedIn and then hit connect from here, because it gives you the option to add a note, which is very, very important when you're reaching out to a stranger, and increases the likelihood they will accept your request and then have a conversation from there. So yeah, always go to their page and then connect from there. And then something else that you can do just sort of more passively for your own research, if you find someone that's maybe in like a role that you're interested in or that you want to work toward, you can always just look at their experience history on LinkedIn and just see kind of like what steps they've taken, what type of roles they've been in, to kind of see how they got to where they are. And it's a really good practice to reach out to alum because you have a connection with them, which is that you're both either went to or currently going to CalArts. So having that connection is super valuable when reaching out to strangers. Having really any type of connection is valuable just because it increases the likelihood that they'll respond. So that's one avenue, going through alumni. Something else, another avenue is that you might look for groups on LinkedIn, and I'm choosing stop motion randomly. But very similar to Facebook and like other type of groups on social media, these are usually arranged around like industries or interests. And these are a really good place to also be connecting with people. They may be posting like discussion threads or questions, and you can be active in those. People may be sharing open positions that don't go on to like big general job boards, that they kind of like want to keep within group. So a good place to also kind of like see some of those industry insider things. And then another avenue on LinkedIn that you can find people to connect with and to ask questions is if you're interested in any companies. Just looking up those companies, and then you can go over here to people, And very similarly to like alumni, if it's a larger company that has a lot of employees, you can scroll or select like whatever criteria you're looking for. And then you also get this list of people that you can connect with. If it's a smaller company, I don't think they usually have this. It might just like show you the people right away. But yeah, just another avenue to find these people to connect with. So that's LinkedIn. So I do, a lot of people ask like if I recommend for artists to have a LinkedIn, and I definitely do. If not for like finding job postings or things like that, for just like going for networking, like what I was just showing, finding those people that you can connect with and like looking at their employment history, just doing research and things like that. LinkedIn is super, super valuable. And another avenue or place that you might connect with people is through professional organizations. So you can visit the websites of professional organizations, and they may have like an email list where they share opportunities or about events or news and things like that. So getting on those lists is a really good thing to do. Also looking at their like staff or member directory, just as another place to find people. Doing things like attending their events, or volunteering with them. And there are still like virtual volunteering opportunities for some organizations too. And I wanted to share this resource that we have, this list of professional associations for artists that are kind of grouped by different industries. So this list is full of, these are all active links that like link to these organizations. And you can find this sheet if you go to Compass and then under the resources tab and then document library, this is sitting in there for you to access. Okay, so another place that you might connect with people is through public workshops or events or conferences. A lot of, most should be online. So just participating in those. And if you're like in a presentation, if it's through Zoom or something, there's obviously the chat function. So participate in that. If you can pose questions, if others are asking questions, you can try to answer them. You can just generally add to the conversation, share resources, and also notice who else is active in the chat, who's maybe asking good questions or sharing a lot of information. You can always try to like private message them like during the presentation and maybe ask, you know, say like why you're messaging them, if you like found a particular question or resource or something that they shared insightful, and maybe ask for their email in that message, or ask if you can connect with them on LinkedIn. So that's also kind of a good way to find people. And it's, you know, you can kind of assume that they have a similar interest to you since they're in this event. So that was also good practice. And then of course, adding those people on LinkedIn if they have an account, or following and engaging with them on social media. And you can do this for the presenters and speakers and also for the participants, because you know, they may also have a lot of knowledge in this field, even if kind of they're in a similar position to you and want to learn from this. Still valuable to also connect with those people. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about following up with people. Like, for example, you messaged someone at a virtual conference or something, got their email. So this is how you would immediately follow up with them after that initial connection. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out in a timely manner, ideally within like 24 hours of the ending of the event. But 1 to 2 days is okay. You just want to make sure that you're still in their mind and that they haven't forgotten. And if you've like mentioned it, asking if you can connect with them on LinkedIn, you know, just connecting on LinkedIn, adding a personal note, just saying, connecting, I met you at, or I saw you at whatever conference or event, just, you know, want to stay connected. Or if you have their email and they gave you their email or whatever, or you got their card or something, you can definitely email them and have links to your LinkedIn or your website or your social media in your email signature so that they're able to find more information about you, just in case they're interested. And also just liking and following businesses and people on social media and like engaging with them through social media is also a way to kind of solidify that initial connection when you're reaching out to someone that you don't know. And then for maintaining these relationships and even more deeply solidifying them and making sure that they're kind of present throughout the years, these are several strategies to do that. So again, like I was talking about before, just setting personal goals personal goals with yourself to check in with people. As you know, it doesn't have to be super often. Again, it can be just like 1 to 2 people per month. But really, yeah, just trying to refresh those connections, keep them alive, keep people remembering you. You can also share career news periodically that you have, very similarly to like I was saying, after you've done like an informational interview with someone, just updating them every so often with your news. Similarly, keeping tabs on other people's career news. So if you see that someone shares that they, got a new job or something, or working in a new field, or got a cool gig or something, just kind of like keeping tabs for yourself. You may, if you're so inclined, keep like a spreadsheet or something where you have like the people, their contact information, what they're doing now, when you last talked to them, things like that. Also, if you are so inclined and are the type to send seasonal greeting cards, you may add them to your list of people that you send greeting cards to, because that also shows like a really nice personal touch for kind of like relatively low effort. And yeah, it's just a really good practice, again, just to keep yourself in people's minds. Also, just cheering for people on social media, engaging with them, liking their stuff, commenting, sharing. People will notice if you're doing that a lot and like supporting them in that way. And again, just keeps that connection fresh. And again, like I was saying before, sharing resources, it's a really good practice whenever you find something that's informative or like helped you in some way, or makes you like think of someone else, just go ahead and share it. And they'll, be happy that you thought of them too. And then something else a little more involved, if you want to, especially stay in contact with your peers, you might form professional peer groups. This is a strategy that Joy Gregory, a CalArts alum who did an event with us earlier in the summer, recommended. She's a writer, and she was saying how she formed like a group with other writers. I forget if she had met them at CalArts or through other things, but they were all writers, and they met every so often to kind of like review each other's writings, like check in on their like professional progress, their goals, and like encourage each other. So definitely, like as an alum, I think this is a super useful practice and really keeps you connected with your peers, because you're all like advancing in your career and growing up together at the same time. So just keeping in touch with those people, and maybe they get really cool opportunities or like are in a position in the future to be able to like hire other people. So just having that connection can be super, super valuable in the future. All right, so that's most of what I have for the content for this presentation. But before we kind of close and get to questions, I want to pose this challenge to you. So hopefully, maybe someone or multiple people came to mind during this presentation. So if that's true, if anyone did, if you're watching live or this recording, I challenge you to reach out to them. You can send this very simple little template that I have here. So you don't even have to do the work of thinking what to say. Just literally you can copy and paste this and then send it to them, and just see what becomes of that. Refresh those older connections, because it's super, super valuable. And that's all I have in terms of content.